Yes, pouring coffee or
Water looks like. Jai Baba. So by popular demand, we'll do Ashok reading.
Teams link again. Sanjay is asking for Teams link on
Is it on Telegram or?
Telegram.
Okay, can somebody send that? Ashok, can you start reading? Meanwhile, I'll send it.
Okay. Avatar Meher Baba
Ki
Ki
jai.
Jai. The seven realities: existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following seven realities. 1. The only real existence is that of the one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. 2. The only real love is the love for this infinity God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. 3. The only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself are sacrificed. 4. Only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. 5. The only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so called bad, in saint and in so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand, without expectation of reward. When compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. The only real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. 7. The only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual amidst every kind of hardship is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Meher Baba ki jai. Thank you. So, any issues on anybody joining? And did you see any messages? I think we are okay, right? How many people on the
It was
call?
okay.
Yeah, how many people on the call? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
But I don't see Karthik. I don't see it on my calendar in Teams. Like this is happening for last 2 weeks. Nothing to do with yesterday's. With
Oh,
that.
is it? No, because I resent the calendar. Let me check if your email ID is
Yeah.
there.
So otherwise, send every Friday or something so we can use it. In the
No,
chat,
actually,
if the link is
I
there,
have a
chat
recurring.
link I can use. Chat link I can use, but it doesn't appear on my calendar. If I just go to the calendar and join, then it doesn't appear as a meeting. Yeah.
So actually, I'll just point out one more feature that we use of Telegram, which so if you look at the Telegram here, you see the pinned message.
Yeah.
So the pinned message always has the link. The first pinned message
Okay.
always has the link.
Yeah,
So
that's
anybody
on.
who gets to Telegram will get this.
Yeah. That's on Telegram, but on Teams
Yeah.
I don't get. So we'll see.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, got it.
Teams. Yeah.
Sure. With that, let's get started reading. Anybody gets the So we read about the ways of the master and all the stories, and I think it was beautifully summarized by Kama as well. Any other feedback on that before we continue or start for today? Okay, so we'll continue then. From there, we go to page 160, the nature of the ego and its termination. So if you look at it from a Trello standpoint, let me just bring it up. So we are roughly about halfway done with the book. But if you look at it, true discipleship and ways of the master was under avatars and perfect master. We have finished sanskaras. We have finished the section on God, the theme of God, the theme of consciousness. And now we will go to ego. So there are three parts of it: nature of the ego and its termination, part 1, 2, and 3. That's what we are starting. I think ego and Maya are the fun stuff, right? So let's see what we learn in this reading. Okay, Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Nature of the ego and its termination. Part 1. The ego as the center of conflict. Subtitle: Origin of ego. In the pre-human stage, consciousness has experiences, but these experiences are not explicitly brought into relation with a central I. For example, a dog may get angry, but it does not continue to feel I am angry. Even in this case, we may find that the dog learns through some experiences and thus bases the action of one experience on another. But this action is a result of a semi-mechanical tension of connected imprints or sanskaras. I'll read that line again. Even in this case, we find that the dog learns through some experiences and thus bases the action of one experience on another. But this action is a result of a semi-mechanical tension of connected imprints or sanskaras. It is different from the intelligent synthesis of experiences that the development of I consciousness makes possible. The first step in submitting the working of isolated impressions to intelligent regulation consists in bringing them all into relation with the center of consciousness, which appears as the explicit, limited ego. The consolidation of ego consciousness is most clear and defined from the beginning of human consciousness. Formation of ego. Human consciousness would be nothing more than a repository for the accumulated imprints of varied experiences if it did not also contain the principle of ego-centered integration, which expresses itself in the attempt to organize and understand experience. The process of understanding experience implies the capacity to hold different bits of experience together as parts of a unity and the capacity to evaluate them by their being brought into mutual relationships. The integration of the opposites of experience is a condition of emancipating consciousness from the thraldom of diverse compulsions and repulsions, which tend to dominate consciousness irrespective of valuation. The early attempts to secure such integration are made through the formation of the ego as its base and center. Ego arises to fulfill.
Now, the previous paragraph, can anyone explain it better? I am unable to make out clearly.
Maybe I'll read it again, and then we can also talk about it. So this is on the formation of ego. Human consciousness would be nothing more than a repository for the accumulated imprints of varied experiences if it did not also contain the principle of ego-centered integration, which expresses itself in the attempt to organize and understand experience. So the idea of ego-centered and consciousness, and imprints. The process of understanding experience implies the capacity to hold different bits of experience together as, as parts of a unity, and the capacity to evaluate them by their being brought into mutual relationships. The integration of the opposites of experience is a condition of emancipating consciousness from the thraldom of diverse compulsions and repulsions which tend to dominate consciousness irrespective of valuation. The early attempts to secure such integration are made through the formation of the ego as its base and center.
The last but one sentence, the integration of opposites of experience. This is the first time it is coming up here. Is a condition of the emancipating consciousness from thraldom of diverse compulsions and repulsions, which tend to dominate consciousness irrespective of valuation. So what I understand here is that the integration between the opposite experiences is helped by the ego initially. So otherwise, it is just impression after impression, A, B, C, D, E, F. What is their relationship with each one is not known in the earlier development evolutionary process, I think.
Pre-human, yeah.
So the development of ego is required for all this sort of a synthesis and integration, as he explains earlier. So that is the requirement for why did ego come up, probably.
Yeah, ego is the spoke. Ego is the spoke, and the others are the threads. Sanskaras are the threads. So we need a spoke there. Yeah.
Mamaji, there is also some more elaboration in the chapter on sanskaras. Probably,
Okay.
the way of winding and unwinding of sanskaras, how they are created, how they are unwound, also would have a relevance to what they are said here, in the sense of integration and then again a disintegration of imprints.
Okay, yeah, I will have to remember to link it up
I
there.
understand.
What I think here is, these three chapters are very important, but they are also a little complicated in terms of the wordings. See, you want to dissect each word. One side is consciousness, one side is ego, one side is sanskaras. So what we are seeing here is that consciousness has developed with the first sanskara, which is basically who am I? That is the first impression or sanskara. That created that infinite consciousness and infinite unconsciousness. So this infinite unconsciousness as drop souls has to experience that first impression took a form, which we went through all the different kingdoms. We took all the different impressions, the gross impressions. And that is why when we reached the human kingdom, it's called human consciousness. So we have mineral consciousness, plant consciousness, animal consciousness, and human consciousness. So human consciousness is a repository of all the different impressions that were gathered through the different kingdoms. And these impressions are stored in the mind or the mental body in the form of the ego personality self. So when we talk about ego, it is a unique aspect of each individual, like what we call as a sanskaric DNA. So, and what Mama mentioned was the ego, if needs to become mature, because remember, in God speaks, the impression consciousness has to become impressionless consciousness, where sanskaras become zero. It is also called matured consciousness. To reach that state of matured consciousness, the soul, which is basically the soul's consciousness, had to go through all the different kingdoms, which is called winding sanskaras, correct? We are taking all the impressions. Then in the human reincarnation, there is spending sanskaras, where you are experiencing the opposites of duality of experiences. That is part of the divine theme. So one of the phases of human consciousness to reach super consciousness is it has to experience both duality, like selfishness to selflessness to selfness kind of thing. So we can say that the human consciousness, which is all we have, but technically we all have unique ego consciousness because of the unique sanskaric DNA or imprint. Jai Baba.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. That's helpful. Next subtitle: Ego arises to fulfill need. The ego emerges as an explicit and unfailing accompaniment to all the happenings of mental life in order to fulfill a certain need. The part played by the ego in human life may be compared to the function of ballast in a ship. The ballast in a ship keeps it from oscillating too much. Without it, the ship is likely to be too light and unsteady and is in danger of being overturned by the lawless winds and waves. Thus, mental energy would be caught up endlessly in the multitudinous mazes of dual experience and would all be wasted and dissipated if there were no provisional nucleus. The ego takes stock of all acquired experience and binds together the active tendencies born of the relatively independent and loose instincts inherited from animal consciousness. The formation of the ego serves the purpose of giving a certain amount of stability to conscious processes and also secures a working equilibrium which makes for a planned and organized life. It would be a mistake before that, the subtitle, it's called Necessary Evil. It would be a mistake, therefore, to imagine that the arising of the ego is without any purpose. Though it arises only to vanish in the end, it does temporarily fulfill a need that could not have been ignored in the long journey of the soul. The ego is not meant to be a permanent handicap, since it can be transcended and outgrown through spiritual endeavor. But the phase of ego formation must nevertheless be looked upon as a necessary evil, which has to come into existence for the time being.
Karthik,
Ego? Yeah.
Some parts are sort of contradictory. I mean, necessary evil. I mean, this is a little intriguing.
I think the reference to necessary evil here is not the first time, right? So it's basically that why create something that is going to be let go and demolished in the end? And we go back to the frequently used analogy of the scaffolding, right? Without the mind and the ego, your ability to process and make this teleological journey successful in the last form of evolution of consciousness is not going to be possible. But is that the be all and end all? No. You have to let go of both the mind and the ego. So I think that's the reference I see here from a necessary evil perspective. Analogy being scaffolding or whatever, right?
Yes,
Kama, any thoughts?
Good analogy. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Ego creates divisions and separation. The ego thus marks and fulfills a certain necessity in the further progress of consciousness. However, since the ego takes shelter in the false idea of being the body, it is a source of much illusion, which vitiates experience. It is of the essence of the ego that it should feel separate from the rest of life by contrasting itself with other forms of life. Thus, though inwardly trying to complete and integrate individual experience, the ego also creates an artificial division between external and internal life in the very attempt to feel and secure its own existence. The division in the totality of life cannot but have its reverberations in the inner individual life over which the ego presides as a guiding genius. It's an important line. I'll just reread that line. This division in the totality of life cannot but have its reverberations in the inner individual life, over which the ego presides as a guiding genius. Ego becomes source of conflicts. While always striving to establish unity and integration in experience, the ego can never realize this objective. Though it establishes a certain kind of balance, this balance is only provisional and temporary. The incompleteness of its attainments is evident from the internal conflict that is never absent as long as experience is being faced from the point of view of the ego. From moment to moment, the mind of man is passing through a series of conflicts. The minds of great and distinguished persons, as well as the minds of common people, are seen to be harassed by conflicting desires and tendencies. Sometimes the conflict the mind is faced with is so acute that the person concerned yields to the pressures, and there is either a partial or total derangement of the mind. There is really no vital difference between the normal and the so-called abnormal individual. Both have to face the same problems, but the one can more or less successfully solve his problems, and the other cannot solve them. Okay. False valuation. The ego attempts to solve its inner conflicts through false valuation and wrong choices. It is characteristic of the ego that it takes all that is unimportant as important and all that is important as unimportant. Thus, although power, fame, wealth, ability, and other worldly attainments and accomplishments are really unimportant, the ego takes delight in these possessions and clings to them as mine. On the other hand, true spirituality is all important for the soul, but the ego looks upon it as unimportant. For example, if a person experiences some bodily or mental discomfort while doing work of spiritual importance, the ego steps in to secure the unimportant bodily or mental comfort, even at the cost of giving up the really important spiritual work. Bodily and mental comfort, as well as other worldly attainments and accomplishments, are often necessary, but they are not therefore important. There is a world of difference between necessity and importance. Many things come to the ego as being necessary, but they are not in themselves important. Spirituality, which comes to the ego as being unnecessary, is really important for the soul. The ego thus represents a deep and fundamental principle of ignorance, which is exhibited in always preferring the unimportant to the important.
Jay Baba,
This is a very big point that's being made here. Go ahead, Sanjay.
This is Kama.
Kama.
I think what you just read, the last two paragraphs, it's very, very significant and important. One of the things we are talking about, we talked about adjustment, false valuation,
False valuation.
I think that the valuation starts to come after we start going through all the opposites of experiences. My observation about human being or my own personal experience has been that unless we go through all kinds of experiences, and it has to be the opposites, sometimes you're down, sometimes you're up. And once you realize that you're caught in this conundrum of duality, you try to figure out, where do I, explore, where do I transcend this duality of opposites, And here, this particular thing clearly says that the false valuation and wrong choices that we make, for example, we believe that the material life is more important than spiritual life. The conditioning is spiritual life is just a kind of, something to make you feel good, if you're God fearing, because somebody has told you, hey, you know what, there's a higher power, you got to pray. And what we are doing is, even in our daily prayers, when we are not blessed by the grace of a teacher, we are asking for stuff for our material life. My, my study should go well, or I should get a good job, and so on and so forth. I mean, those things are important in a practical sense, but you don't have to pray for it. You have to do your work. You have to work hard for that. But nobody tells us, hey, the only goal in life is self realization. The reason for taking this human birth is to realize that fundamental question, who am I? And to experience and realize the I am God state, Anal Haq, Aham Brahmasmi, that no one tells you unless you are blessed with the grace of a master. And even there, we also go through this, conditioning where even after having a perfect master, we go through this challenge. Sometimes we forget ourselves and we focus on the unimportant. So I think this is a very important part where he says power, fame, wealth, ability, and other worldly attainments and accomplishments are really unimportant. But the ego takes delight in these possessions and clings to them as mine. In the second paragraph, where, for example, if a person experiences some bodily or mental discomfort while doing work of spiritual importance, the ego steps in to secure the unimportant bodily or mental comfort, even at the cost of giving up the really important spiritual work. This one is clearly meant for people who do vipassana, I can tell you, because when you go for the 10-day silent meditation, especially for the first time, you are asked to sit. Only people who have some disability, they sit in a chair, but you're actually sitting, and they would like you to sit without moving, okay, for an hour at least. You have to practice that. And it's so difficult, I'm telling you, because you're going for this vipassana meditation practice so that you can get some spiritual benefit out of it. But the body really, breaks you, the mind, but not only the physical body, but the mental, the mind is really protesting, what are you trying to do out here? Trying to focus and have become aware of your breath and trying to concentrate the mind, because the mind dwells in duality. That is the nature of the mind. And in earlier paragraphs, the ego, as Karthik said, is a scaffolding, because the mind ego is developed through evolution. It has a purpose, and then in the end, you have to let go of it. We should not become slaves of the mind ego, and that is what has happened to humanity. That the sanskaras have made us become slaves to our mind ego, and it controls us. Yeah, Baba.
I just wanted to add one thing.
Go ahead, Ashok.
That is, what could be the scaffolding part is of course welcome, and that's correct. But I'm saying what could be the ingredients of or the characters of true valuation? Something to ponder. I think maybe we can do it later, but
No,
some of
true valuation is basically all the Baba messages, the 7 awakenings, how to love God, the 8 postulates, my wish, and the 7 realities, Hafiz sayings, and then, 12 ways of realizing God. So those, and the Parvartigar prayer, especially the prayer of repentance, those are all indicators uh, to discover what is right valuation. That's how I look at it. Okay, Baba.
correct. Thank you.
Jai Baba, I'm struggling a little bit. We read that ego attempts to solve its inner conflicts through false valuation and wrong choices, blah, blah, blah. So it says ego almost always makes wrong choices or false valuation. And initially, we also read that it's a scaffolding. It emerges to fulfill a certain need. And it's also like a ballast in the ship. So I can't balance these two things together in my mind. It's necessary as a ballast in the ship, but it always makes wrong choices. How do we get these two things together
Actually, I was also thinking of something similar. Maybe this will help throw some light in your direction. So I know I said the scaffolding part, but then what is the role that is necessary in our journey, which makes it acceptable till the time it's time to let go of it? And the answer I was getting was the fact that in this journey, you need a context. A place to stand from and unravel and understand and make the journey progress. That is achieved by the mind ego complex. In the absence of that, you're no different from
anybody else on the same topic.
No.
I understand, Karthik, what you.
Okay.
Sunilji, if I can just put it in
the example I can give you from my understanding, is that let's take nuclear power. Okay, the nuclear power can be used for energy, and nuclear power can also be used for destruction. Look at the internet or television. You can watch junk shows, or you can watch National Geographic science shows and emancipate yourself. So similarly, the ego mind, as it say, even though it looks like an evil, it's not. Because if you look at it from the top-down point of view, it is all part of the realized self. That whole before the Big Bang aspect, the Paratpar, Parabrahma, Paramatma scene. So the ego is just a tool which has evolved through evolution, as we know, but it's the way you use it. As Karthik said, we have to use the mind ego especially for our material life. There's nothing wrong in shouting and screaming at your employee if he's not doing the job, as long as you know why you are doing it, So I think in that sense, the mind ego can be looked upon as a tool, how you use it. For example, if you want to make money to take care of your Maslow's thing, it's a good thing. And if you're also thinking that, okay, I want to do some good stuff with it, great. But if you're going to make money to show off that I'm in the top 10 billionaires of the world, then there is a problem. Okay, Bob.
Karma, what is the positive? See, the material side, I get it, right? So you need that to, make your journey. Is there at all a positive role of the scaffolding of the mind ego complex? Is there something that's unavoidably important for it to be around?
You mean to say, is the mind ego need to be there?
Yeah, till we make the progress.
Oh yes,
till
absolutely.
We go to the seventh plane.
See, what you're seeing is till the sixth plane, you're dealing with duality. Okay, right?
Yeah.
And up till thank God, once you cross the fourth plane, then you don't have to worry, but you still don't want to be stuck in the fifth or sixth plane. You want to transcend that. So the mind ego, as long as the material body is there, okay, as long as you have this human form with the gross, subtle, and mental body, which needs to be fed, food or whatever, the mind ego is always going to be present. See, what happens is, let's look at it from a hypothetical point of view. If a spiritual aspirant goes from the sixth plane to the seventh plane, which means that the ego is sanskaras, which means the conventional ego with sanskaras becomes zero. So we know that the false I ego becomes the real ego. The real ego doesn't have any sanskaras, but the real ego is present with the Sadgurus and the 56 God realized beings who are present here after they attain God realization. So they have an ego. The individualized ego actually is there even when you see, these are all terminologies. From what I understand in God Speaks, when you drop off your human body, this drop soul, which is God realized, goes into state 2B, infinite consciousness state, and maintains that individualized aspect, actually. So that's a different thing. But yes, the ego has to be there, till the sixth plane, and then it gets converted from the false I ego to the real ego, the divine ego, basically. Okay, Baba.
the question that I'm struggling with is, why do we need it at all?
Why do you need it at all is explained from the beginning. Say, if you take the evolutionary trend, say all the animals and as they develop, they have experiences, and then
Right.
they keep accumulating these experiences, but just react on each experience without any sort of a valuation for the experience. So that is what is happening in the lower evolutionary trend.
And animals don't have ego, is what we are saying.
Animals
right?
start off with the ego at some small level, I think.
Very small
This
ego.
family behavior, this group behavior, and then the leadership, all these things are, I think, they are, say, the starting point of ego. And later on, this ego works uh, on a destructive mode, in the sense that they are unable to synthesize the experiences which is good for them, either material or spiritual. Spiritual doesn't come up till the human development. So the material itself, they are unable to synthesize the different experiences. They react on each experience and try to live according to that experience and then go for a new experience. But in the human development, this that is what is explained here as integration and synthesis. So they start trying to put 2 3 experiences together and try to get a new idea on that. That is done by the ego. So this
Do
is
we have an
more
example of that, Mamaji? Can we dwell deeper into that? Any of us has used ego in a positive way to synthesize experiences, or it's not visible to us?
no.
Well,
You can take any
Sunil, I will tell you one thing that the analogy has been used where if you have a fireplace with a lot of wood, okay,
Right.
and you're churning the wood, actually what happens is sometimes you will take a stick of wood from the wooden fireplace and churn it. And then what happens? You take that same wood and throw it in. So this is an analogy to, to show how the ego mind can be used for our self-emancipation, because the ultimate goal is liberation, nirvana or nirvikalpa samadhi. That is
Right.
the purpose of taking the human life, and that is the purpose of the mind ego, to be used as a tool in a positive way. So it has both functions. The mind is not an enemy. I think it is how we use it. It's like, if you let the pets and children take over your life, then you have a problem. The mind ego is like letting, your I should not go into spouses and partners, sorry, but
Mind and ego
so,
are two different things, right? Ego
no, okay.
sits seat of
See. It's like this. You have to look at the
right,
context. Sometimes
right.
Baba uses mind ego. Sometimes his ego uses ego mind. Now,
Okay.
technical definition of mind is mental body. Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at the fifth and sixth plane, the mind mental body has two domains. That is the domain of thinking, fifth plane, and the second domain of feeling. Okay? That is the mind. On the other hand, mind is also the repository of keeping all the sanskaric impressions. Okay. The sanskaric impressions are stored in the repository called the mind or the mental body. That is one aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when does the ego come? Ego is simply that Sunil's ego, Kama's ego. So let's keep it very simple. The ego is the unique ego personality self that we are. And what is the ego? It is the cumulative net effect of all the impressions, good or bad, action of thoughts, words, and deeds that we have accumulated in this life and many lifetimes, including the different kingdoms. So that
Okay.
is the ego.
Understood up to here.
Okay, what's next?
So, but it always gives you false valuation, is what we heard. So,
No, I think it is again the aspect of Vivek and Vairagya. See, a addict, for example, a person who has alcoholic, Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is he drinking all the time is because his sanskaras of alcoholism is very dominant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The samskaric impression. So that is why he keeps drinking. And one day it happens, he has to make that effort, intense effort to stop smoking or drinking. Why? Because he has got that vivek and vairagya. So discrimination is just the right knowledge. That is only 1%. 99% is the effort we have to make. So ultimately, once you know I have an ego, I have to sublimate this ego. I have the anger of ego. I have lust, greed, and anger, kama, krodha, lobh, or the infatuation, lust, greed, anger, jealousy, fear, worry. These are all different components of the ego in different degrees, right? What we call as ego consciousness, actually. That is also another way of looking at it, the ego consciousness. Because gross consciousness, subtle consciousness, mental consciousness, they are all coming under the same thing because the ego is the net cumulative effect. So in a way that it has to be looked upon in terms of contextual aspect, because the word ego is a very, ambiguous word in a way, like ahankaram, we say ahankar, that is ego,
Right. Karthik, did you get answer to your question?
Kinda, sorta. And I think one to give you an example, you asked for a specific thing, right? What's an example?
Right.
The fact that we are on this call on a Sunday morning where the rest of the world is probably, in bed and doing, many other things is an
Right.
example of the positive use of the ego, mind ego,
Mhm.
right?
All right.
So where, of course, we suffered from false valuation, we are making the transition from false valuation to gradually recognition of true values, and here we are, right? So again, without that mind ego complex, we might not have got here.
Mhm.
We might just be like
So what made the
the
valuation
dog.
choice to be on this call? Ego, or it didn't make it? Something else made the
What?
choice. See, we are
It
saying
is the
that we
mind
are on
ego
this
that made the
call.
call. Yeah.
So mind ego made the correct valuation in this case,
Yes.
right? So
That's what I would interpret.
yeah, it's not always that the mind ego will make wrong choices. Sometimes, usually it may make wrong choices, but
Is
we
it
have to
as put as sweeping like always false value? Okay, it looks like that, but I think
the sanskaras make the wrong valuation, not the ego. So the ego is just the personality self. Okay, kama ego, sunil ego, but actually it is the behind the ego is basically sanskaras. So the sanskaric impressions determines the kind of action you do. That's how you want to look at it.
right. But this sense, the para about false valuation almost denounces ego and rubbishes it. Like it always gives you false valuation, material life, blah, blah, blah. But then we are saying that ego also helps us to shift towards positive valuation. I'm just struggling. Did I read it wrongly, or?
No, right. Because you have to go through the opposites of experiences first.
Okay.
The ego will see, first of all, you're going to be rich and you feel like, I want to experience. So what happens is the ego has a role when making certain discrimination, when you have to make certain decisions or you want to re-engineer yourself. Without the mind ego, we can't take decisions. Okay. That is very clear. So I think that you have to look at it from a very contextual point of view and how the sentence has been framed. Otherwise, we'll get caught up in analyzing too much of that word, frankly.
Okay.
Look at the big
right.
picture.
Let's go forward then.
The word. Don't get stuck on the word, basically. Yeah.
Okay. I will try.
If I can put an evolutionary say scale on this, say we don't have any sort of discrimination till we become human beings or early, say, later animals. So we get an experience, we react to that experience. That is the earliest state. So then slightly there is some sort of a valuation added in the human reincarnation process. How we add the valuation maybe more towards the material aspects of this. So ego tries to synthesize or integrate in the reincarnation process more towards the material aspect and gradually wears out of that. And evolutionary process is the real valuation, or the coming to the say positive from the right choices from the false valuation. So that is how I look at it. So that this is the spiritual path. So this takes a lot of effort and then learning at each point. So when you react, you have a new experience. When you respond, there is a different experience. So you learn when you learn that responding is better than reacting, then you try to hold on to that. So I feel reincarnation gives us a lot of experience to play around in the material sphere. Then gradually we tend to get out of this clutches and then come into the say evolutionary process where we try to give real valuation or go towards the positive valuation. Jai Baba.
To extrapolate what Mamaji said, it's again coming back to winding sanskaras, spending sanskaras, unwinding sanskaras.
Yes.
Perfect. So what happens till the animal kingdom, you have no control. You know, the animal has no control. It is going purely on what we call as animal instinct. Correct.
Mhm.
Second thing is, when you become a human being, the consciousness becomes full and complete. Technically, you are almost self-realized. You are self-realized, but that consciousness is contaminated with sanskaric impressions.
Mhm.
Now, the process of winding sanskaras is over, because the whole process of going through winding sanskaras was to reach the human state, the human kingdom or human consciousness, which is now full and complete. Now we are carrying a lot of baggage of sanskaras, which needs to be thrown off now, right? The sanskaras have to become zero, because we know now. So the animal instinct starts to transmute into analytical reasoning mind. So you can say that human beings have this ability to reason. That is why in the chapter of love, the first 2 pages where we talk about the conflict between love and reason, you can say reason means thinking mind ego, analytical reasoning mind, ARM, or thinking mind ego is conflicting with the breathing heart love, the loving soul self. So technically, there is a clash between the real I self, which we call oils, our innermost loving self, vis-a-vis the ego, which is the thinking mind ego, right? The ego personality self, right? That is the false I self. The ego is basically the false I, because it is not your real I. You know, that is what we are trying to reach. The ego prevents us from reaching the real I self, the oils, because there's a barrier of sanskaras. Okay. Now, what happens? We are now spending sanskaras as a human and basically experiencing the opposites of duality. And there comes a time when you say, enough is enough. This is not going anywhere. That is where the Vivek and Vairagya comes, the grace of a perfect master comes, and we are going from analytical reasoning mind to to intuition, the heart intuition. That is where the right valuation comes. You know, so I think that what as Mama said, that technically the unwinding of sanskara starts from the involution aspect. See, as long as we are attached to the 5 physical sensations, touch, taste, sound, smell, sight, we are still in the gross sphere of existence, you know. So one has to first, transcend that, or transmute that. So, there are different ways of looking at this, that's my understanding. Yeah, Baba.
Jai Baba. I think I need to think deep still. I'm reading this line: the formation of ego serves the purpose of giving certain amount of stability to conscious process, and also secures the working equilibrium, which makes for a planned and organized life. So I understand all that Kama said. I hope I understand, but I'm trying to figure out two sides of the ego necessity and the evil. So I think I need to read more and think more. Anyway, let's go forward and probably we'll get more insights. Thank you. Yeah, Baba.
On a lighter
Sunil,
note,
conversation.
yeah, go ahead, Kama.
No, I said to Sunil, like later on, if he's got some time, if he's okay, we can have an offline conversation. I would love to
Sure.
discuss with him,
Dwell
because I
deeper.
also learn a lot just by talking to Sunil. Thank you, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, sure. Count me in if time permits. I will join as well. Because okay. So anyway,
Our ego is hurt, saying that we are left out.
That's a good one. That's a good
I
one.
agree with
that's
Mama.
That's what I wanted to tell Sunil. So maybe you're too attached to the ego right now, Sunil. So let's move on for now, but let's come back to it on a lighter note, right? Anyway, so one more thing, he made a point which made me very nervous. So I wanted to bring that out. Kama, so Vipassana asks you to sit in a place for hours, is it? Apart, I mean, you were saying something like that.
Yes. What I'm trying
I'm
to
going to have
say
a
is,
rethink now. Go ahead.
no. That's why I said that before you go for a Vipassana meditation practice, you have to be
First
very,
go to
very
Singapore.
cognizant and clear what is needed. How do you physically and mentally be prepared, so that you don't be surprised, because the mind the first 3 days will just take over and you want to run off from the place. That's what happens, because it's 10 hours of meditation, because it's to get up at 4 o'clock and finishes at 9:30 in the evening. Not that you're sitting continuously, there are breaks. But the longest one is from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. and the other one is from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. But every hour there might be some talk, a recorded talk given, so that they help you in your practice. But I'm talking about the big picture, that it is the most challenging thing I've ever done. But I believe that everybody who reads Discourses God Speaks and wants to understand sanskaras experientially will be able to do that if you do that Vipassana practice at least once. That much I can guarantee. Jai Baba.
I take your words seriously, but I'm unnerved by what you say right now. So I think I'll start with what the Dars just went through. First, I'll make a trip to Singapore and try if I can survive 21 days just in a physical room. I'll go crazy.
I swear, that's Vipassana itself.
Yeah, so I'll try that first. And I think to make it even more complex, maybe I should go with Nandini. Okay, that will be the test. Going alone is one step easier.
Perfect, Vipassana.
So I think that's my first qualifying step before I take up Vipassana. Okay, jokes aside, let's get back. So we read the para subtitle false valuation, and now we continue with continue to the next one. Conflicts solved through true valuation. The mind rarely functions harmoniously because it is mostly guided and governed by forces in the subconscious. Few persons take the trouble to attain mastery over these hidden forces that direct the course of mental life. The elimination of conflict is possible only through conscious control over the forces in the subconscious. This control can be permanently attained only through the repeated exercise of true valuation in all the cases of conflict presented to the mind. Need for intelligent and firm choices. If the mind is to be freed from conflict, it must always make the right choice and must unfailingly prefer the truly important to the unimportant. The choice has to be both intelligent and firm in all cases of conflict, important as well as unimportant. It has to be intelligent because only through the pursuit of true and permanent values is it possible to attain a poise that is not detrimental to the dynamic and creative flow of mental life. An unintelligent choice, if it is firm, may temporarily overcome conflict, but it is bound in the long run to curtail the scope of life or to hamper the fulfillment of the whole personality. Moreover, the conflict will surely reappear in some other form if it has not been intelligently solved. An intelligent solution, on the other hand, requires an insight into true values, which have to be disentangled from false values. The problem of the conflict of desires thus turns out to be the problem of conflicting values, and the solution of mental conflict, therefore, requires a deep search for the real meaning of life. It is only through wisdom that the mind can be freed from conflict. Very interesting. The choice has to be intelligent and firm.
Yes, it ends with wisdom. So it starts with intelligence. Yes.
Yeah. Let us continue. Fidelity to right choice. Having once known what the right choice is, the next step is to stick to it firmly. Although the competing tendencies in the mind may be quieted by choosing one particular course in preference to other alternatives, they still continue to act as obstacles in making the choice fully effective and operative. At times, there is a danger of a decision being subverted through the intensification of those competing forces in the subconscious. To avoid defeat, the mind must stick tenaciously to the right values it has perceived. Thus, the solution of mental conflict requires not only perception of right values, but also an unswerving fidelity to them. Subtitle: True values must govern all matters. An intelligent and firm choice, however, has to be repeatedly exercised in all matters, small or great. For the ordinary worries of life are not in any way less important than the serious problems with which the mind is confronted in times of crisis. The roots of mental conflict cannot completely disappear as long as there is only intermittent exercise of intelligent and firm choice. The life of true values can be spontaneous only when the mind has developed the unbroken habit of choosing the right values. 3/4 of our life is made up of ordinary things, and though conflict considering ordinary things may not cause much mental agony, it still leaves in the mind a sense of uneasiness that something is wrong. The conflicts that turn upon ordinary things are rare, are rarely even brought to the surface of consciousness. Instead, they cast a shadow on one's general feeling about life as if from behind a screen. Such conflicts have to be brought to the surface of consciousness and frankly faced before they can be adequately solved. Okay.
I just have an observation. I think this chapter on this presentation and chapter on intelligent and unintelligent action would be the key to in the right direction to discipline the ego.
Good comparison, but I think I was also thinking exactly of that in the 2 paragraphs above. But I think the key takeaway is this right valuation being intelligent and firm. It has to be sustainable and intelligent every time. But yes, there is a commonality there. Mama?
Ashok's idea is really good. We can relate it there. How do we intelligent choice and unintelligent choice? Regarding the false values, it will be an unintelligent choice.
Intelligent choice. Yes.
Intelligent choice will be for the true values.
Correct.
Jai Baba.
Yes,
Khalid,
Khalid.
this is Khalid here. Yeah. You know, the subheading which we just read a little while ago, need for intelligent and firm choices. The last paragraph, you know, it says it is only through wisdom that the mind can be freed from conflict. So if we read this total sentence, the problem of the conflict of desires thus turns out to be the problem of conflicting values. And the solution of mental conflict, therefore, requires a deep search for the real meaning of life. It is only through wisdom that the mind can be freed from conflict. You know, coming back to Sunil's question, where, you know, we went right around the globe, but were unable to, you know, find a way to what Sunil was thinking. So here, if we, in my opinion, if we draw a comparison between sanskaras and ego, you know, so sanskara, the process of unwinding, winding, or what you call spending of sanskaras is what we've read earlier, is what is the total or the key value of this human form. But then here we come across ego. So true valuation or getting a positive outcome from ego, what I feel, you know, it's wisdom. The wisdom may come to us from reading. The wisdom may come to us from our tuning of the mind. Or there can be various ways of getting wisdom. But one way where we can use the scaffolding of ego for the what you call better guidance is through wisdom. So in my opinion, I think this line really is very profound and reflective on the total subject of ego. So I wanted to share that. Jai Baba.
Sure, absolutely.
Just thinking, ego is probably not in a dual state 0 or 1. There must be degrees of ego as you progress on the planes. And as the ego recedes, the wisdom increases, or love increases, or positive valuations increase. So it's not 0-1 state. And it's not that, yeah, perhaps I should, yeah. Just my, thought process. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, the progress is from wisdom to intuition later. So initially intelligence to wisdom, and from wisdom onwards it is intuition.
Right.
That's how the path is like that. It takes you one step ahead each time like this.
Yeah, I still am a little, okay, let me not bring in doubts yet. Let's move on. Let me keep my ego in check. Karthik, go ahead, please. Yeah.
No, please go ahead. I mean, you can have given that we in a truly non-discriminatory manner, we can have another session dedicated to ego. But let's give some reflection time and probably do it on Saturday next, right? Where we also share some other references to ego from other sources of Baba, and anything else relevant that we find, reflect and use the week to think about it, and then come back together and address this. Because anyway, this is a 3-part series we are reading. So we will get back to it. But please vocalize your doubt.
Yeah, my conflict is only that I understood it as false valuation, understood the evil part of the ego. I understood evil has to turn into wisdom by reduction of ego and blah, blah, blah. But necessity of ego, the usefulness of ego, how do we, synthesis of the sanskaras that we talked about, ego arises to fulfill a need. That one, I still have a little bit of doubt. Do we need it at all, and why? I couldn't fully process it in my mind. Anyway, I'll read more.
I think I liked Mama's response, which is from the first two paragraphs of this chapter. Mama, you want to repeat that? Because I think I relate to that, and I think that's the role, the positive role, or the necessary part of the role that ego plays, which is basically synthesis. He used a nice word, synthesis of
integration and
experiences.
synthesis.
Integration and synthesis. He used,
Yes, for Sunil to give an example, I think all this, say, computer-based technology that we are deriving, it does a particular function as tuned to. It doesn't change. So that tuning is either for false valuation or for true valuation. So when you go beyond this, say, artificial intelligence, so what does it do? Actually, it will do as it is dictated. With all the available data, it tries to process, synthesize, and then act from that standpoint. So ego is that particular aspect which takes all your sanskaras, all your impressions, experiences together and creates a new way for you to either react or respond. So ego is required as a driving force, but the valuation added to the driving force is to be thought of. Otherwise, you land in either the material dualistic aspect or the path towards reality.
So you're saying the artificial intelligence is the equivalent of ego, and it leads us to...
I don't know, that comes to my mind. Say, because artificial intelligence...
I think Sunil, I think that's a good point. I have tried to dwell on that. What you said, I have discussed this with Karthik also. There is something which Baba has said, infinite intelligence, which happens in the seventh plane when you have God realized. You can say that human beings are an analogy for artificial intelligence, and animals are basically pre-programmed, just like the way computers were programmed and they did what they needed to do. Whereas artificial intelligence, we know that actually the machine becomes more intelligent than the human being. So similarly, yes, you're right. Human beings are or artificial intelligence is an analogy for what human beings are. That is a good example. The second part was, I think, when you were talking about the different degrees of ego, I wanted to give my input. Baba says that you're going from gross desires or coarse, C-O-A-R-S-E, coarse desires, coarser desires, which is part of the gross aspect, to the finer desires, because the subtle body is much about feelings, that kind of stuff. When you're looking at the action of deeds, that is why it is part of the gross body. Action of words or feelings is part of the subtle body, and action of thoughts is part of the mental body. So definitely the ego becomes finer and finer. You become from a coarse rowdy to a gentleman kind of situation, but you still have an ego, right? You become Prince Charles rather than, some dacoit, So that is the difference. You could say that, the ego, how it goes. And I think what Mama also said, I liked when he talked about the intelligence that is used for Vivek and Vairagya, the discrimination to gain that spiritual wisdom, which Khalid pointed out, and using that spiritual wisdom, which is what we are gaining by reading this, because this is spiritual knowledge. Okay, God speaks, discourses, what we are reading is spiritual knowledge that will give us spiritual wisdom. Now it is up to us how we use it. So that sanskaras will definitely directly or indirectly influence how we use our spiritual wisdom to put it into action, you know. And then,
Right.
as Mama said, once you keep making that effort, intense effort and infinite patience, then slowly it becomes effortless. So it becomes intuitive rather than we have to always keep analyzing and discriminating. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. I think I'm getting a little clearer, so we should move forward and then maybe revisit at some point. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Kama.
Wisdom is dawning.
Kama, I have a question. So the use of spiritual wisdom is the path to reducing the intensity of sanskaras?
Yes, yes, sure.
Okay.
I mean, we have to put it into action. See, bottom line is reading all these are theory. Ultimately, are we putting those 7 awakenings, from Baba's messages into action? When people say, I want to love Baba, I love Baba. What does it mean, love Baba means? Baba is our innermost loving self. He's not some object of desire up there. He's just a personification of how every human being is the realized self. So Baba is an example of how every human being can attain God consciousness state. Only thing is he's an avatar whose functions are different. He's got more power. But Baba has clearly said that people who have Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the 56 God realized beings, the avatar, Sadgurus, everybody are in the same state of God consciousness. Only thing is the functions are different. So yes, spiritual wisdom means whether are we putting it into action, because there are two aspects to it. One can have spiritual knowledge, which is only 1%, because that is right knowledge, but knowledge does not become right knowledge till you put it into action. Sugarcane juice can be sweet because somebody said it, but did you drink it and experience it? That is the difference. Jai Baba.
So the key is practice.
Yes, practice, practice, practice. That's the key word. Yes.
Yes, 99% perspiration.
Perspiration. Yeah, 1% wisdom and then 99% perspiration. I mean, inspiration. But yeah. Good point. Okay, so let's continue. We are continuing on page 164 with the first para. The subtitle is True Values Must Govern All Matters. An intelligent and firm choice, however, has to be repeatedly exercised in all matters, small or great. Did I finish this? No, I did not. For the ordinary worries of life are not in any way less important than the serious problems with which the mind is confronted in times of crisis. The roots of mental conflict cannot completely disappear as long as there is only intermittent exercise of intelligent and firm choice. The true values can be spontaneous only when the mind has developed the unbroken habit of choosing the right values. 3/4 of our life is made up of ordinary things, and though conflict concerning ordinary things may not cause much mental agony, it still leaves in the mind a sense of uneasiness that something is wrong. The conflicts that turn upon ordinary things are rarely even brought to the surface of consciousness. Instead, they cast a shadow on one's general feeling about life as if from behind a screen. Such conflicts have to be brought to the surface of consciousness and frankly faced before they can be adequately solved. Yes, I had read this. Apologies. Continuing, subtitle Hidden Conflicts. The process of bringing conflict to the surface of consciousness should not degenerate, however, into a process of imagining conflict where there is none. The sure sign of a real hidden conflict is the sense that the whole of one's heart is not in the thought or action that happens to be dominant at the moment. There is a vague feeling of a narrowing down or a radical restriction of life. On such occasions, an attempt should be made to analyze one's mental state through deep introspection. For such analysis brings to light the hidden conflicts concerning the matter. longing for ideal as motive power. When the conflicts are thus brought to light, it is possible to resolve them through intelligent and firm choices. The most important requirement for satisfactory resolution of conflict is motive power or inspiration, which can only come from a burning longing for some comprehensive ideal. Analysis in itself may aid choice, but the choice will remain a barren and ineffective intellectual preference unless it is vitalized by zeal for some ideal appealing to the deepest and most significant strata of human personality. Modern psychology has done much to reveal the sources of conflict, but it has yet to discover methods of awakening inspiration or supplying the mind with something that makes life worth living. This indeed is the creative task facing the saviors of humanity. Disintegration of ego ends in realizing truth. The establishment of a true ideal is the beginning of right valuation. Right valuation, in turn, is the undoing of the constructions of the ego, which thrives on false valuation. Any action that expresses the true values of life contributes towards the disintegration of the ego, which is a product of ages of ignorant action. Life cannot be permanently imprisoned within the cage of the ego. It must at some time strive toward the truth. In the ripeness of evolution comes the momentous discovery that life cannot be understood and lived fully as long as it is made to move around the pivot of the ego. Man is then driven by the logic of his own experience to find the true center of experience and reorganize his life in the truth. This entails the wearing out of the ego and its replacement by truth consciousness. The disintegration of the ego culminates in realizing the truth. The false nucleus of consolidated sanskaras must disappear if there is to be a true integration and fulfillment of life. So that's the end of part 1. Heady stuff, but I think the last paragraph is interesting, right? So it's the establishment of a true ideal is the beginning of right valuation. Right valuation, in turn, is the undoing of the constructions of the ego, which thrives on false valuation. So I hope we all have established a true ideal. And from there, things flow, but it's a long and arduous path.
Jai Baba, one just insight. When you just read this line, right valuation in turn is the undoing of the constructions of the ego, which thrives on false valuation. Probably it answers Sunil's question, what is the ego? The ego, yes, it is what it says here. It thrives on false valuation. Now, what is the opposite of ego? It is love. I think we had discussed this earlier about love and ego being inversely proportional. So ego is not there by itself. Opposite to it is the love aspect. And that is where I think this longing for ideal, for analysis. So here it says that the burning longing for some comprehensive ideal. So I think if we can look at our own life, we have been conditioned to focus on our material life, get a good education, get a good job, settle well, blah, blah, blah. And praying to God is just a time pass, just to make you feel good, emotionally feel good. But now, after coming to Baba, we realize that the only real ideal is basically union with Baba, which means finding ourself, our innermost loving self. And Baba has clearly said that it can be done with love. But love can be through different mediums, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, Raja yoga, and so on, So I think that, the ego is come through evolution. It helps us to experience duality, opposites of experiences. And then we have to use our spiritual wisdom and our intuitive heart to start, being on the journey, which happens in the first plane, which is the subtle plane of involution. So this is what I feel is a summary of this chapter. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Kama. Can we say, just trying to clarify in my mind, can we say that in the human form, the soul gets the clearest identification with duality, because you form that I self, I am myself, and God is somebody else. So you're like one different identified personality.
Absolutely,
So,
because we
Sunilji,
have the analytical reasoning mind. One is we have
Right.
full and complete consciousness. Over
Right.
and above that, we are given an analytical reasoning mind. So we have been given that intellect to discriminate. Vivek, and discrimination happens here. And discrimination will happen only we have knowledge of right valuation, correct? How can we discriminate? Somebody has to teach us. Now, the kid is not going to know. The kid is born in a jungle who doesn't know about God. He's not going to
Right.
know anything. So I think that is where the guidance of a perfect master. See, technically, our parents should be our guide. They say parents are God. I mean, it has its own meaning, right? Now, we also know that through reincarnation theory, that within the own family, our parents, siblings, spouses, friends have played different roles in different lifetimes, right? Our father or mother could have been our sister, brother, and we could have been a male or female. But in the
Right.
real sense, what we are looking for is a spiritual mentor, which is basically a Sadguru or an avatar to guide us. And so, yes, the human form is taken because we have reached that highest state of consciousness, but it is not pure. It is like water that we need to drink and we need to filter it. So I look at Manonash as a form of filtration, defiltration, making water pure. Same thing. We are trying to reach that pure consciousness, which we latently are. That is our natural state. Jai Baba.
Right. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. This
Correct,
chapter, from this chapter, the thoughts which I get, just trying to put it into a few lines. So I just thought I would share with the forum, like the evolutionary sanskaric baggage gives rise to the conflict. And the process of validating this conflict is what is the image of ego. And acquiring wisdom and proper or correct implementation of this wisdom is what addresses uh, the sublimation of ego. So this was like, I tried to put it into three lines. I don't know to what extent I've been able to understand this, but this is what comes to my mind, from this chapter. Jai Baba.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Even the last line, the false nucleus, one is the disintegration of the ego, which means Manonash. We know that when you say ego means mind, ego, mind, or mind, ego, culminates in realizing the truth, which we know, nirvana or nirvikalpa samadhi. The false nucleus of consolidated sanskaras must disappear if there is to be a true integration and fulfillment of life. So actually, you can look at this term, false nucleus of consolidated sanskaras, as one of the definitions for the ego. That's my understanding. Yeah, Bob.
Nice.
Cool. So I think we wrap up a few minutes earlier. Anybody wants to bring something up? Something interesting, something funny, please go right ahead. We see
There are
Rajesh
so many-
after a while. Hi Rajesh. Jai Baba.
There are so many. No, there are so many silent people here. I thought we are talking too much. So let them also join in.
Yes.
I mean, do you mean to say let's understand other people's egos?
Not understand. Anyway,
There was something I wanted to share. It happened yesterday.
Sure. Go ahead.
We are contemplating of getting a new four-wheeler. So, within the family, we were discussing, keeping in mind the financial commitments and other. So we had boiled on to a Kia make car. So we were in a dilemma of between buying a Sonnet or a Seltos. So after evaluating within ourselves, true or false, we came to let's settle for a Sonnet, because of financial implementation implications there. There was a difference of 3.5 lakhs of price. So this has been going on for a few days. Yesterday, it so happened that I discussed this with Cherry also. So Cherry suggested, see, since you are in a two mind, why don't you leave it to Baba? I said, yes, I that's a good idea. She said, make chits, and let Baba decide. So instead of making two chits, say for one from Sonnet and one for Seltos, we made four chits, two of Sonnet and two of Seltos, to make it more acceptable. And after leaving the chits at Baba's feet for some time, so then we came for the process of picking the chits. So first I asked my son to pick it up. He picked up one. It was Seltos. Then I said, okay, Baba decided Seltos. Again, I asked my wife, I said, no, you pick it up. But close your eyes and pick it up, because you know which chit my son picked up. So, she did that. She picked up the same chit with closed eyes, which my son had picked up. It was also Seltos. But then again, what you call the human mind in me, I said, no, now I should also pick to be 100% sure, So I also closed my eyes and picked up a chit which was not the same which my son and my wife had picked up. It was a different chit, by appearance. But when I opened the chit, that too was Seltos. So, it was 100% worry from Baba. But the fact is, the way Baba, conveys his message when you surrender to him or give him the authority of your life, the decision comes very simply. And I really thank Cherry for, suggesting this. So I just thought I'll share it with the forum. Jai Baba.
But you have taxed Baba 3 times. Once was enough, I think.
Exactly. That's what I said. The human mind in me, pushed Baba 3 times, Jai Baba.
So I think you wanted a Sonnet, looks like.
It seems like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, and I think I mean on a lighter note, I looked at those two cars closely. I think you should have like 36 chits, because they each product has so many variants and so many engine types. It's just so damn confusing in selecting them.
Absolutely, right. Absolutely. Yeah. But I was being a little liberal with Baba, so I said, okay, let's settle for 4 only.
So if you look at cars
out
generally,
of Seltos, you can choose which model to buy based on your financials.
Yeah. There is a variety of it.
Problem.
Yes. Yeah. Huge range there. Yeah. And I think it's even overlapping, right? So the lower end of Seltos is almost overlapping on price with Sonnet top end and so on. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We already have in the family. We already have a Seltos. So I was saying, why not a Sonnet? My son-in-law is having a Seltos, so I said, why not a Sonnet? But then Baba said, no, you have to go for a Seltos itself. So that's how it is.
Yeah. Very good. May you enjoy driving around in your new car and get the car quickly, because I think there is a waiting time.
Yes,
So
there is.
all the
Yes,
best for
yes,
that.
yes.
All of you have a
Thank you,
great
Karthik.
week ahead, and let's connect back in the coming Saturday. All right.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, everybody.
Jai Baba, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Everybody.
Jai
Yeah.
Baba.
Jai Baba.